there's some irony in this for us because Frank Seravalli of Daily Faceoff, he was the one who first broke the relocation, the rumors, and then, you know, the official relocation. It was a very bad day for us. He came on our show. He was great on our show.
But why did he come on our show, Leah? Because I kind of went at him.
Yeah, there was some drama. It was a very tense time.
It was a tense time for us. I kind of went at Frank a little bit.
Yeah, he ended up being correct.
And
I actually
was right.
Yeah, and I had the chance to talk to him at the NHL draft in Vegas this year. And, you know, when we talked, he said, listen, like, I love Arizona. I love them as a market. You know, this was just the situation. I didn't want to see this happen. There was a lot that got misconstrued. So I think there might, for some Coyotes fans, there's maybe a little bit of a bitter taste toward Frank Seravalli. But listen, at the end of the day, he was correct.
He was right.
And now we have Frank Seravalli talking about Arizona, but in a new light, in a new way, in a positive way. And Frank Seravalli was on the Clean Hits Hockey podcast this week. That's a Utah show. They asked him about Arizona specifically. And before we show some of the clips of what he said, I just want to say that the reason this came up is because they said, what pitch would you give to Arizona fans to potentially follow Utah or like extend an olive branch? And he said, I wouldn't do that. Like, I'm never going to ask a Oakland Raiders fan to watch the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm not going to ask a St. Louis Rams fan to follow the LA Rams. So I'm not going to do that. And I respected that answer. I especially being on a Utah show, he could have gave them an answer that maybe they wanted to hear. So I respected that. They asked him about Arizona. We cut together a couple of his answers. So let's take a listen to Frank Seravalli on the Clean Hits Hockey podcast.
To me, I would ultimately say at the end of the day to hockey fans in the Valley is just be patient. Like there's going to be in short order, I think, significant change to the landscape where you're seeing. My prediction is that you'll be seeing NHL hockey again in Arizona within the next 5 years. But I truly believe that hockey can work in Arizona. And I think the number of transplants are only going to grow. It's not really a place where when you walk around or you drive around, people say, you know, I say, like, where are you from? Like, almost no one says, yeah, I'm from Phoenix. I'm from here. It's a very transient city. And I think you've got the ability to capture hockey fans that are moving in and or snowbirding there that they should be able to hit on. That I would have Arizona right at the top of the list. It's not just the arena, it's ownership, and it's getting rid of the baggage that existed with that team for a long time of really not being competitive. So that clean slate and fresh start. And to be honest, I think the best thing they could do is do it in conjunction with the Suns, whether it's the Suns owner, Mat Ishbia, planting a flag and saying he wants both winter sports there and building a new arena that houses both of them. That, I think, to me is a solid play all day long.
So there you go.
I want to give Frank some flowers.
Yeah.
Because I have been very critical of Frank at times.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that one time, not at times.
Just
once.
that one time.
Just once.
Yeah.
Just once ever. So I already personally apologize, Frank, but thanks, Frank. That positivity on a Wednesday PHNX hockey show.
Yeah, and listen, I'm kind of been on the side where I'm expecting the longest possible wait just to manage my expectations. Like, in my head, I'm like 10 years, just because that's helps for me, especially, you know, with the Mat Ishbia, with the Footprint Center situation, the lease not ending to the mid 2030s, which is a crazy thing to say. So if that maybe conjunction were to happen, it would be then. To hear Frank Seravalli say, you might expect to see it back with like in the next 5 years. Now,
I would expect to see it back.
Yeah, I would expect to see it back. This is somebody who was very correct in his reporting on the team leaving and going to Salt Lake City. And I have almost no choice but to listen to what he's saying and realize that, you know, maybe he doesn't have all the sources, but he must have some source here. Yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and say Frank's right. I'm agreeing. I can verify his statements because of reporting I've done. I haven't done reporting on this, but it's just interesting. Like, if you compare this to 6 months ago, he was right. His sources were right. And now I believe that If he believes strongly 5 years, then I'm inclined to believe him. Does it mean I'm getting my hopes up? No. I'm still keeping it's going to be a long time expectation, because I don't want to give false promises to people. You know, we have like a platform with the Arizona hockey community. I don't want to do that. That's not what I'm doing. But it is refreshing to hear, especially from somebody who Coyotes fans were pretty livid with at the time, kind of now come around and say, you know, not only do I think it'll be 5 years, but also be complimentary of the market, kind of assert that he thinks it's a better NHL market than even Houston. And a lot of it with Houston has to do with the lack of interest in an ownership group there. But, you know, we talk all the time about it. It kind of comes down to the arena, but he's so right that it also comes down to ownership. And it would be interesting, whether it's Mat Ishbia or somebody else, it would be maybe it is the fresh start that the organization would need.
Yeah, and I do want to give a shout out again to Clean Hits Hockey. Thanks for that.
And thanks for being here, Clean Hits, and thanks for getting Frank on and getting that info. So we appreciate you guys.
So here's a couple things. Even if his sources, and I do believe he's not going to come on the air and say this if he hasn't heard something, and more substantial than just a rumor. So that's got to show an appetite from somebody, somewhere, somebody. Mm-hmm. The concern, though, and again, where you talked about, you know, slowing it down a little bit, even if there things were starting to be in place, we've seen the barriers between getting a new team, a new arena. We've seen it. And so there are so many things still yet to happen, but it's so nice to hear some positive news. We talked about it last week, what Bill Daly's comments were, and he had to get to his boss to kind of come back and back him up a little bit. But Bill Daly said some stuff that made it very optimistic for Arizona hockey fans. Then you get the players poll where they, in dramatic fashion, said the city they want to go to the most is Phoenix. So I do believe there are things starting to align. Do I believe sitting here right now that there are people talking about bringing a hockey team back to Arizona? The answer is yes. I believe there are people working behind the scenes. I think there are people that are talking about it. That does not mean they're writing checks. That does not mean that they're putting shovels in the ground. That means they are talking about it. And that's positive if you're an Arizona hockey fan. It's not like you hear that, you know, some of the teams that have moved from cities and you hear, oh, that team's never going back. There's never going to be another team in that particular city or another. It's not what's happening here in Arizona. I think it is a very positive sign. I do think the league, and what Gary said is they're not talking about expansion right now. I do not think you will hear a thing from Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, and the NHL on expansion for at least a year. Whether they have owners knocking on the door, signed up, ready to go, they're not going to talk about it for a year. They need to let the dust settle from this mess.
And I understand that from their perspective as well.
But if there's going to be a team playing here in 5 years, Leah, did you see how long it's taken them to build an arena in Calgary? 3 years. So that means in the next 24 to 36 months, there is an owner, there is a shovel, and there is a plan for a building for them to play in the next 24 to 36 months. That's incredibly encouraging if you're talking about 5 years being a team.
I'm sure they probably need a couple shovels at least. But.
A couple? I'm in. I'll go volunteer.
Yeah, I'll volunteer also.
And Roaring Fork's right. The CBA is definitely put that in
That's true. And we also have, you know, the board meetings going on this week. Pierre Lebrun tweeted yesterday that Bettman says expansion didn't come up today in the board meeting. This was yesterday in any way or fashion. That's consistent with the comments he made last week. And I don't think it's their priority right now. But like I said on last week's show, just because it's not happening right now and doesn't mean that it's not discussions that they're having, not with the board, but with among themselves in the NHL and league offices. So you got to take those comments with a grain of salt. Remember that Gary Bettman is a lawyer, and he uses his lawyer speak in a way that supports what he has to say.
And Leah, it's interesting that Mat Ishbia came up again, and the combination of two teams in one building, and that's been the comment for this building this team since they moved here in 96, 97 was two teams being owned by the same owner is the only way to make that work in a single facility. I think that is the best answer here.
I do too.
Mat Ishbia, we keep hearing from people that we know around the Suns, and our own PHNX Suns crew is saying there's nothing there. But if what we said is true, that Gary Bettman is saying that we're not talking about expansion and we're going into the Board of Governors and we're not talking expansion, do you think he's going to Mat Ishbia, hey, why don't you tell everybody you're bringing a hockey team in? Why don't you? No, he's saying zip it. Don't talk about it. Even if you're interested, we can hear that you're interested, but we're not talking about it.
Yeah, and the one public comment Ishbia has made is, I would love to see hockey back here. It was supportive of the idea.
Supportive of the idea.
Once again, very vague, very lawyerish.
Yes.
But
yes.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that be the solution. Do I think that's the end-all, be-all, only solution? No. Absolutely not. I'm telling you, I'm more optimistic than most on this. I really, really am. I do think a team is coming back. 5 is incredibly optimistic.
Very.
Because a lot of things happen. Like, we think 5 years is an incredibly long time.
It's not.
It's quick to get all these things to happen. But
if your house renovation took 6 months, 5 years is quick.
But I am optimistic that a team will be back here for everything we've talked about. We've talked about the players want to be here, the league wants to be here, Gary Bettman wants to be here. There is hockey fan base here in Arizona. It just didn't work with the ownership group in the arena because they didn't have the right ownership at the right time. So I believe it's coming. That's it.
Y'all silly like the mayor.